weather has taken a turn for the worst. It's looking rather ominous, I would say. I wonder if it's a sign of the times for the former head of state.
Well, and I have no right to talk about any cultural significance of today's rain. But hey, I'm from Cape Town. What do I know about rain? But we're seeing some activity coming from the president's homestead here in Nklandla. We've seen some presidential security vehicles just coming around, not coming directly to us, but quite aware of our presence here this morning. If you can remember, yesterday my colleague Tuba Vilane and his camera operator were asked by the presidential security services to move as far away from the home as possible. But for now, we are still waiting for any reaction or any response from President Jacob Zuma's family, whether they'll be offering any reaction or any comment on yesterday's decision by NPA head Shaun Abrams to reinstate charges of fraud, corruption and racketeering against the former president. But for now, we wait patiently from any response from the former president Jacob Zuma or his family. But at the same time, we have been assured that the local ANC would be able to talk to us a little bit later, giving us some reaction to yesterday's announcement. If you can remember, in previous court cases involving former President Jacob Zuma, he had throngs and throngs of support. Many people camping outside the KZN High Court in Pietermaritzburg. We had, again, in the past, former tripartite alliance leaders coming out in support of former President Jacob Zuma, that time when he was still president of the ANC, and even a former leader of the ANC Youth League, now leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters, Julius Malema, also coming back then out in support for former President Jacob Zuma. We're waiting to hear whether that will continue if and when the president now returns to court to answer for these 16 charges relating to fraud, corruption and racketeering. We're hoping to get some response from the local ANC a bit later today.
Lester, it may be too early to tell. I mean, the announcement is quite fresh. The day itself is fairly young, so it's hard to say whether or not locals in Nklandla will be in support of the president. We do know that the ANC lost the municipality to the IFP, but what sense are you getting on the ground, you know, from whether it's community members, whether it is legal minds, whether it is political parties other than the ANC?
Well, while former President Jacob Zuma's political fortunes across the country seem to be quite weak at the moment, he still has a significant support base here in particularly rural KZN. If you remember last weekend when the ANC or all political parties were out and about canvassing people to come out for the IEC registration weekend, former President Jacob Zuma was deployed by his organization, the ANC, to canvass support here in KZN, and judging from those pictures, he was quite well received. Whether that will translate throughout the country, we wait to see. We're also wanting to know from the ANC's national leadership, with now these charges now firmly over the head of former President Jacob Zuma, will he still be part of the election campaign? As I said, he was campaigning last week for the party here in KZN. Will he still be a consideration to canvass support for the ANC just 12 months ahead of the general election next year, whether he'll be considered a liability for the party or whether he still has continued support, particularly in rural KZN, where we are now at the moment, where President Jacob Zuma has firmly entrenched himself as a man of the soil, a man of the people. The ANC now needs to decide whether he can still be at least not the face of the party or the campaign, but a significant player in trying to canvass support for the party ahead of the 2019 general elections.
Lester, I think you are closer to the former president's home state than South Africans are to actually seeing him in court. What happens now?
Well, that is the question that we have now, whether there'll be whether the former president will be officially charged, whether he'll be going to a police station to have him officially charged. We still don't know whether if he'll be offered the chance to present himself to a police station or to the court, and whether he'll have to apply for a bail proceeding. That is still up in the air, and still questions that we are waiting answers from the National Prosecuting Authority and of course from police. But we do know that President Jacob Zuma's legal woes are far from over. While the NPA has yesterday announced that it will recharge the former president, we're still expecting quite a significant and lengthy court proceeding. Remember, he's charged with 16 counts of fraud and corruption relating to 783 payments allegedly made to him through a corrupt relationship with his former legal advisor, Schabir Shaik. So there's still plenty that still needs to be understood and needs to be determined. Also in the High Court, NGO, a lobby group in support of President Jacob Zuma, they're also applying for a permanent stay of prosecution by the NPA. But what we understand, without detailing too much of the merits of that case, from what we're hearing from legal insiders, is that that is not a significantly strong case, and that it is most likely to be dismissed by the High Court. But it speaks to the essence that while the NPA has now officially reinstated charges against former President Jacob Zuma, his legal woes, the legal story surrounding former President Jacob Zuma is still far from over. It still could be a number of years before we have finality regarding the prosecution and possible conviction of former President Jacob Zuma on these fraud and corruption charges.
All right, Lester, let's let you have some reprieve from the inclement weather there. eNCA reporter Lester Kiewit will continue to cross live to Lester throughout the course of the day.